Hey, what's up followers? Dave here from C3D. So in this video today, we're going to be showing you how to connect up one of our C3D THC units to one of our Nighthawk V2 CNC controllers. So for those of you that don't know, we've recently launched our C3D THCs, which is this box over here. And what it is it's an independent plasma torch height controller. So it's designed to work with systems that may support up and down signals for plasma, or with systems that actually do not support it, for example, like our Nighthawk, which basically doesn't allow you to override the Z-axis while it's in the middle of moving around and doing jobs. Now, the majority of CNC controllers on this planet basically are similar to the way our Nighthawk is, where it doesn't have independent up-down control for plasma overrides. So we had to use a little bit of smarts within our C3D THC to be able to do it. Now, typically there would be quite a lot of wiring that would be needed to interface this unit with this unit, but in this video we're going to show you how to interface a V2 Nighthawk to one of these C3D THCs. So let's just jump straight in and do that. Now, if we take a look here, we've got one of our screwdrivers on our bench here, and so this has a Phillips head unit on there at the moment, and we have two flathead screwdrivers here. One is bigger than the other. You may be able to get away with just the small one here, but we're going to use these in order to be able to lever out our connectors, and then to screw any terminals we'll be using this as well. So first thing that we'll do is we need to take a look at what other bits we've got. So we have a V2 Nighthawk controller here, and we have one of our quick link cables and our C3D THC. Now, the first thing that we want to do is we need to be able to open up both of these units in order to be able to connect this quick link cable. So we're going to start with the Nighthawk first. So I'm just going to move this slightly out of the way to give us a little bit of space here. And I'll move the Nighthawk to here. Now, the first thing that you want to do is you want to remove the connectors off the front of this unit. So I'm just going to switch over to this flathead screwdriver there. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically lever these out so that these connectors pop out nice and easily rather than you having to try to break your fingers to get them out. You can see that it's pretty straightforward. If we just put it in the slot here and just give it a little twist, it'll actually come straight out there. With these larger connectors, you can do one half there and then do the other half, and then that should be able to come out nice and easily for you. And these two-way ones are pretty easy. They'll just come out relatively simply. Alright, now some of these larger connectors here for the motors, you should be able, oops, that one's still stuck in there, let's just free that up. We should be able to just put some pressure on here and remove these. Now, if you already have a Nighthawk that's already in an existing system and you have it all wired up and working, we would definitely recommend labeling all of your cables before you start. You will notice on the Nighthawk here, we have a whole bunch of these pins on here that tells you what each one does. It may be a good idea for you to just line those up and make sure that those are definitely correct for you. So definitely just go through and just make sure that everything's labeled so you can always plug everything back in the way you had it. Now, what we need to do is we need to open up the Nighthawk case now that we've removed those connectors. So first thing is we're just going to take our flathead screwdriver and we're going to carefully lever just under this corner here. Now, this is the same procedure that you would follow for opening the Nighthawk when you are adjusting the current on your drives. Let's just get in under there, and that should pop this little fan cover off there. And you'll notice that there's 4 screws in here. So what we can do now is we can take our, let's get our Phillips head screwdriver on there. And we're just going to go through and unscrew this here now. Now, just remember that you do need somewhere to put your screws. Make sure not to lose any as well. Let's just go there. Alrighty, and that's feeling pretty good. They all feel pretty loose. Now, it is important just to be mindful of this fan cord that's just here on this side here. Your cases are going to be much nicer than this. This was actually an experimental case when we were figuring out where to run the THC quick link cable through. So what we're going to do is we're just going to carefully move that out of the way without tugging on this fan cable too much at all. And we're just going to put this down on the bench. Now, I'm going to leave these screws sitting in this fan, so these bolts will actually stay in this fan. You'll notice this is a separate cover as well, but we'll try to keep that all together. Now what we need to do is we need to come over. If you want to, you can carefully pull out a little bit of this fan cord. Keep in mind it's not too long in there, so just be careful when pulling on it. We're going to go over to this side, and you'll see this is where our power terminals are. So this is our normal power terminals that go into the Nighthawk here. And basically you've got these two that hold this connector onto the chassis. So what we want to do is we just want to undo this screw on here. And we'll get that so that's loose. We'll then come in and do this side as well. All right, and then that now should completely loosen the main power input connection to the Nighthawk. So we're just going to carefully leave that there. Might be a good idea for these if you do take these screws out of here, so we'll just put those aside. And now all we need to do in order to open the case is we need to basically loosen these four off on the top here. So let's just go ahead and do that now. And these can be completely removed. They are quite small, so just be careful not to lose them. They're just little countersunk screws. Okay, now what we need to do is we just need to be mindful of a couple of things here when we go to open this case. And this also applies for when you're adjusting the current on your Nighthawk. So basically what we want to do is we just want to be mindful of the antenna cable that's inside this case. So now that we've loosened everything off here, this should be able to come off. And to do it, it's a good idea just to grip the back of this unit, sort of grab onto here, so your thumb's on here. Just going to put our hand on here now, and we're just going to try to roll this away from this case. So this might just take a little bit of effort when it starts to separate. Now here's what you have to do. Now that you've got this opened and you've got your finger in there, you actually want to roll the front upwards like this so that it comes away. Now you do need to be very careful here. I'm not trying to pull this case too far away from this main board under here, or this main heatsink here. I'm just creating a little bit of a gap, and then now what you want to do is, keeping it together nice and close, we're just going to roll this over. So it just rolls straight back over. And you can already see in there that we have this ribbon cable here, which is for the membrane switch on the Nighthawk. And we also have this little black cable here, which is connected to our antenna. So I'll try to bring those up into view. You can also see where the cable for our fan goes, which is tucked into this little keyway here. Now, if I bring this up closer, this is why you need to be careful with this. You can actually see on there that tiny little IPEX connector, which is on the main processor of the Nighthawk. And basically, we just want to make sure not to pull on that connector. So you can now keep the Nighthawk together like this, so with the main case rolled back. So obviously when we go to refit it, we're just going to be rolling it back over without stressing that cable at all. And that is basically the Nighthawk part opened. Now what we need to do is we need to get our ribbon cable, and we need to connect it. It doesn't matter which way you take this ribbon cable, it's both the same fittings on here facing the same direction. So what we need to do is we need to plug one end into here. So if we carefully just move this out of the way, you can see there's a little notch here on this connector, and that needs to line up with the notch that's on the front here. So if we plug this into there, it should only go in one way. Okay, so I want to take a little moment here just to take this little close-up shot so you can see where our connector's gone in, and you can see where that little notch is on this side. So it would be impossible for you to get this around the wrong way. Now, the only other thing that you need to do once you connect this in is that if you are ready to operate this Nighthawk as a THC, you just need to flick this switch over into the THC position. So at the moment, it's currently in the THC position. So you have a mode between either normal, which is this direction. Right, if you have it on there, then that will put it in the normal mode, or you can flick it over to the THC direction here, and that means that it will override your Z-axis for the purposes of torch height control. So make sure to flip this little tactile switch, which is right next to the connector, onto the THC mode when you're ready, and then that will automatically put it into THC mode. It's really that simple. So let's move on now to the rest of the case. And now what we want to do is we want to run this out the side of our Nighthawk here, where we have our keyway that our fan came through. So it's up to you if you wish to run this below or above this membrane switch. I would prefer to go underneath it. So let's just put that underneath, and we'll let that just run out the side there for now. Just make sure that that's in there nice and securely. And I'm going to try to line this up over here, so when the time comes for us to fold our case back over, we can actually go ahead and do that. So now what we want to do is we want to take this ribbon cable and we want to feed this into the keyway slot there. Now just push it down so it goes all the way down towards the bottom. And you can see we've left ourselves just a little bit of slack here inside the case. And that's perfectly okay for us to have. Now what we're going to do is we are going to take our fan cable here and also put that in this channel too. Now this can just sit in there quite loosely right now. Normally from the direction that we're facing, we want the cord to face towards the blue part of the heatsink. So we've got to make sure that where the cable goes is on the bottom where the bench is and not near the top, and also towards the rear of the Nighthawk case. So just be mindful of that. And then the other cord, let's just put it into this slot. Now all we need to do is roll this back over. And we just need to be mindful again of our cords that we have in here and make sure that we push these up into there. See if I can get that going right for you. It's a bit hard, I'm doing this in reverse, but we'll see. Now we have our power connector on this side as well. Let's make sure that we don't pinch any of the cables that are on there either, and roll that over. Now, once we're here, let's just try and get that going in there. We've already got those cords on the back. It is a little bit fiddly, guys. We have tried our best to keep this simple, but basically we just want to lever this into position across here. There we go. That's starting to come through. And then what we do is once your green connectors are poking through on here, sometimes you might need to just give them a little poke on the front here to get them through, and to get that USB connector through that slot as well, because basically that's what seems to be the tightest part on all of these Nighthawks. And there we go, that just slotted in nicely. And so now we have our cord out the side here, and we also have our fan, and nothing here is pinched or obstructed. And so now what we want to do is we want to put the Nighthawk back together again. So the first thing I would recommend doing is starting with the 4 that we took off here. So they're the 4 small ones that we have sitting over here. I have 1, 2, 3. Alright, let's just worry about that other one shortly. So, to line these back up again, sometimes you might need to just pull them back into where they're from. And you'll see the little brass screw terminal will actually show through on here as well. Might be a little bit tricky to see, but sometimes to get them in the right spot, you just need to just give them a bit of a wiggle with the actual screw. So we've just got the actual screw on there. If we put it in the hole, we can kind of just lever it back into the right spot, and then when you tighten it, it will locate itself and will be nice and secure for you. Now you don't need to do these too tightly, just tight enough to keep the controller in its case there properly. Now again, we could come back through here and do our power connector, so let's just tilt that up there. We'll line our power connector up onto here, and you'll actually see the holes inside there where you can screw in. So I like to get them roughly over the position where they need to be, apply a bit of pressure with one hand, and just come in here and tighten this up. Now, I don't like to do these too super tight, I'll just do these loosely for now. It doesn't need to be perfectly aligned, it just needs to match up with the holes, is all you really need to do here. So that now gets those, so now I can retighten this last one that we already started. And the power connector is now reattached on here. Just be mindful of the polarity. It will always try to sit in the one position where it originally was, which should make things nice and easy. But just make sure that the positive terminal, which will be a red wire on the other side of this, which you can probably see before if we had it out before, is pointing towards the rear of the Nighthawk where the spot is, which indicates the polarity here of this connector. So now that we've gone ahead and re-secured that, let's come around to this side here, and we want to get our fan in. Now again, as I said before, we want the bottom of the Nighthawk is here, so we want this wire to be at the bottom. And basically what we want to do, we're not going to worry about the tightness of it right now, but let's just get this fan into position here, and we'll try to hold it roughly in the right spot there. Let me just get this going here. So this plate goes onto here, we can just stack this on top. Just make sure that it is set up in such a way as well too, I should mention, that this part here, the fan will spin this way and will force air down this way. So that part in here, if it's got the blue and white on the bottom, that part goes towards the Nighthawk here. And that will make sure that as the fan spins, it forces air into the Nighthawk and doesn't try to pull air out of the Nighthawk. So let's get these onto here now. There we go. Oopsie daisy. Very good. And let's grab our screwdriver here. Now with these, I recommend, again, trying to just get them slightly loose in the first place. So just feel around for the little hole. They don't go that deeply in there. You might only get a couple of turns. And then now that you've got all 4 of those mounted, you don't need to do this too crazy tight, but just make it tight enough so that the fan is actually secured and isn't going to vibrate off the Nighthawk. It will actually hold it in place because the chassis is made out of a polymer. So these fans are all made out of a polymer. Then again, all we need to do is put our fan cover, just snap that back on. If this is a previous existing Nighthawk, we definitely recommend, while you've got this fan cover off, and you can pop it off again, just give it a good clean in there. Sometimes you get a lot of dust and dirt build up in here. This particular Nighthawk has been running on our test bench for quite a while, so it has a little bit of dust in there. So you could just use something simple like a nice air duster to be able to clear it out. We just purchased this one from a site called Clever Aussie. So it's very good. So let's just put this on here now. There we go. And then now what we want to do, we're just going to move this out of the way. We can see where it's coming through the side there. We're just going to make sure to tuck this in a bit in here, just so this fan cable is out of the way. And always just be careful. We also had some leads at the back here. Just be careful not to pinch any of the leads that are on here as well. That's actually looking pretty good. We've got that in that slot nicely now, and that's coming out there. Now we can jump straight on to doing the THC part. So I'm just going to move this Nighthawk out of the way a bit. And what I'll do now is I'm just going to reconnect these connectors on here just to get them out of the way. For those of you with an existing system, as I said, just make sure all your cables are labeled so you can just follow whatever it says on here to get it back to normal. And there we go. So this Nighthawk section is now done and ready to go. Now we can move on to our THC. So let's go grab our screwdriver again, and we're going to swap out here for our wide flatty. And what we want to do now is, again, we just want to lever these connectors off here. So just give it a little twist, and that should be enough to loosen that out there. You don't need to lever off the front of the case. You can literally just twist it on the connector, and they should pop out quite easily. Beautiful. Beautiful. And there we go. So we'll take out all of these connectors off the front here first. And now all we need to do is switch over to our Phillips head again. So this is a PH2 size screw. All these bolts are PH2. I'm just going to undo these 4 that hold this case on. These are a little bit longer. We may shorten them in future releases. We know a few of you have already received your C3D THC, so we really hope this video is going to be handy for you. And there we go. So we now have that final screw released off there. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to open up this case. So first thing that we need to do to this is pretty much just lift it straight out. Now we have loosened off one of these standoffs. Now again, with this one, we just need to be careful that when we actually roll this back, that we are just mindful, very, very mindful of this cable here, which is going to the membrane switch on the front here. So again, we're just going to roll this straight over towards the back. And so what we want to do now is we basically want to loosen these 2 bolts off on the screen. Now again, paying close attention to this particular connector here. So let's just go ahead now and loosen these 2 bolts off. And so what this does is this is actually what keeps the screen on the unit. So I've got both of these screws on here pretty loose. I'll just completely remove them. Now, believe it or not, we have thought this through, and this is the best way for us to be able to do it, despite the connector that we need being over this side. So I'm going to put that one there. This one here, not quite loose yet. There we go. And so what we need to do now is very carefully lift up this screen. So there's only this row of pins across the back here that actually holds it in once we remove these two. So if I carefully lift upwards here, you can see that the screen has come out of there and you have these row of pins there. Now what we want to do is we want to get our Nighthawk into position now to keep things nice and easy. So we're going to move it to here. And we want to make sure that we run this kind of across this way. So over the top here where the screen goes, we're going to plug that end into there, again paying attention to where the notch is. We're going to put that over here so that it comes through to the middle, so it's going to sit pretty much there. And it's right near this cord, so we just need to be careful. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make sure these pins on the back here line up perfectly with the pins on here. So let me just get in there and do that. There we go, and the easiest way to tell is your existing holes should match up here and here. So you should be able to screw those terminals straight back in there. So let's just grab this here and let's put that in there. All right, and that gets our screen in there nice and secured. Now, just like before, we just need to be a little bit careful here. You will notice that there's this little notch missing out the side of the case here. This one's a little bit rough. Yours is going to be much nicer than this. And basically what we want to do is we want to roll this over here now. And we want to just carefully have it just resting on top there. Grab it from the bottom and just check to make sure that it definitely slots in correctly. Did you feel how that, or hear how that kind of just fell in there? So there are little keyways in here that this case can only sit in one position. So there's a little slot on the side here, so this can freely move in here. Basically, I'll just see if I can get this together and we'll take a closer look. So again, we just need to get our 4 screws back into the chassis. They don't need to be too tight, again, just enough for you to be able to secure the actual, secure the lid back on the controller. Okay, and that's pretty much it, guys. So now if we take a closer look here, we have our Nighthawk and our THC both linked together with this cable in between, and should make for a nice and easy mount for you guys. Now, yours is probably going to be a little bit longer than this one that we're using on the test bench here. I believe we're setting them out about 800 to 1000 mil long, so I think 800 is the length that we're going to be going with, but don't quote me on that at time of this video. But basically, you can just choose to now mount this together and complete the rest of the wiring across the front, which suits your plasma cutter as per the instructions for the THC. And basically, this is how you wire up a V2 Nighthawk. It's very, very simple. So I hope this video has been helpful, guys, and will make it nice and easy for you to get started with very high quality plasma cutting with your Nighthawk controller and your C3D THC. Thanks, guys. Have a fantastic day.